Hi, John the Icon here, and I'm here to speak to you about exactly what sealed the fate of Andrew Tate. One moment. Um, the reason I'm making this video is because I feel like with all the dialogue and conversation around Andrew Tate, there's a lot completely absent, or a lot that people are not fully grasping. So, with that being said, I want to start with what Andrew Tate represents. Andrew Tate represents, if I'm being truthful, something that has caused a lot of problems, and that's toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity has been used as a buzzword over the last 5 years. However, at the core of it, it does get at the issue of the problems that arise from the macho man thought process. You can Google it yourself. I'm not gonna, waste your time trying to be exact with my language or speak to you as if you don't know how to use a smartphone. So you can Google toxic masculinity on your own, but the gist of it is the thought process of a man trying to be overly dominant, overly arrogant, overly into himself, overly ambitious, overly invested in capitalistic ideology. Right? That's toxic masculinity in a nutshell. And Andrew Tate, being a rich, chauvinistic male, is symbolic of that manifested in real life. So the issue with Andrew Tate as a whole is what he represents, right? Something that society is trying to get as far away from as possible because of the problems that have arisen from toxic masculinity. Now, the issue with trying to get rid of toxic masculinity is you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are certain aspects of toxic masculinity that have not proven to the general male consensus to be all bad, right? Unfortunately, a lot of men, they want to make money. A lot of men want to be in shape. A lot of men like being aggressive. A lot of men enjoy and revel in competing with other men for prestige and for status. And the root of that want, and why it cannot be taken away and thrown away with toxic masculinity, is because of the results. Um, in any era, if a man is successful and in shape and aggressive and focused and heads towards his goals in any era, he's gonna attract success and he's gonna attract women. And that's why toxic masculinity as a whole has not completely went away. And honestly, it's why it will never go away. We need people who are willing to work 80 hours a week and get no sleep to keep this thing running. And that being said, that's why Andrew Tate has struck such a nerve within society and why he has been upheld by so many men as not problematic, although he has some problematic ideas. So the first thing is that's what Andrew Tate represents, right? Toxic masculinity. And toxic masculinity in itself deserves its own video, but it's something that we can't just throw away, right? Because there's too many good aspects of toxic masculinity that all men and women agree on that we can't just throw away. And I want to transition now into, okay, we got what he represents, right? But why did did he get arrested, and why has there been such a concerted effort to get rid of this man? And if you ask me, from my perspective, I watched the Vice documentary, and there's two reasons, but really one main reason why Andrew Tate had to go, or is now on the list of people who got to get out of the social consciousness. Right? He has to be diminished. He must be done away with. One, he had his own bank. And what you got to understand about a person who's reached a level to make their own bank, they're a problem. They're a huge issue because the power structures that exist within our society are handed down from generation to generation to generation. Very few people sneak into these areas, right? If you do your research on the elites or anybody who's made a lot of money, or the kids who go to Harvard, Stanford, Brown, even across the world, the elites in India and whatever, Ghana, any country that has elite society people, they're all related, cousins, brothers, sisters, married into it. Very few people get to use their genius to sneak into the higher levels of life, right? It looks to be from the surface level that Andrew Tate has used his genius to sneak in. And when you sneak in, you may be allowed to stay, but you have to play by the rules. And if you know anything about Andrew Tate and the character that he's displayed on the internet and the way that he carries himself, he's not willing to play by the rules. And that's why he has to go. Because when you start your own bank, however small it may be, obviously in comparison to Chase, in comparison to BMO Harris, in comparison to these other world, national banks, as small as it may be, the fact that anybody will willingly give him their money is terrifying to the power structure that exists as it is. Um, and you can't have that much power as one man and not have some organization controlling you directly. Now, what do I mean by having the organization control you directly? Andrew Tate has his own organization that he's a part of, a group of men who do what they do, right? And he doesn't have, a record company behind him with some type of executive who can dictate what he does. He's not like LeBron James, who, whether we like it or not, has to kind of do what the NBA wants him to do because they write his checks for the most part, right? He's a single entity that can do what he wants on his own. And he made his own bank. Something that's unheard of, and we can't even fathom as regular people. That's one reason why Andrew Tate had to go, right? You got to go. You're being flamboyant with your power in front of the power structure, and that can never last. But the second reason, and the main reason why Andrew Tate had to go, and the main reason why I'm making this video is because I want to share this with the world. He had to go because he converted to Islam. And when you convert to Islam as a regular person, no one bats an eye because the power you possess is that of just one man, right? It's not that big of a deal for Tom, who was a Christian or atheist, to become a Muslim. But when you're a leader of men and you have men paying you monthly, subscribing to your ideology, paying to go to your school, completely at your beck and call, and then you convert to Islam, that's terrifying, and that's something that must be stopped in its tracks. And here's why it must be stopped in its tracks. It's not the thought process. It's the level of dedication people have to their religion, right? To be dedicated to me because I'm your financial advisor is one thing, but I can mess the money up. Once I mess the money up, you're going, right? Because I was your financial advisor. Once I no longer have palpable financial advice, you leave. It makes absolute sense, right? If I'm your leader because I'm good at fighting or something like that, once I get beat up a couple times, right, my leadership becomes in question and you got to go. But if I, right, can get you to follow me and there's a religious component to it, that's something that cannot really be taken away, because once you tap into a person's spirit and once you tap into a person's soul beyond material gain or material means, you've done something that is beyond language. And anytime you operate beyond language, you scare the power structure. This is why Martin Luther King was assassinated. This is why Malcolm X was assassinated. These people penetrated humanity deeper than material gain. There was no money to be made following Martin Luther King into danger. There was no money to be made following Malcolm X after he came back from Mecca. There was no money to be made following Gandhi and whoever else you want to think of who's in that light. There's no money to be made. And the question is, how did these men do this? They did it the same way Andrew Tate did, by giving humanity something, specifically young men, something that they're lacking, right? Giving them hope, giving them something to gravitate towards or hold on to. So Andrew Tate converting to Islam is exactly why he had to go and why they would do everything in their power to get rid of this man. Because you can't have somebody who's self-made to a degree, who has those views so blatantly, who's made that much money, who has that much influence over people. You can't have him have a spiritual component to his character, right? When he was just a webcam guy and a kickboxer and flamboyant and flashy with the glasses on and being a chauvinistic pig, when he was just that guy, that's fine. You're just on the internet talking, really. Like, you know what I mean? You got a couple people who go to your university. No one cares about that. But if you're going to speak to the spirit of man and get these men to be dedicated to you on a spiritual level, you got to go, because that's too much power. If you want an example of what I'm saying, you got to think about the history that we've had of suicide bombers. Suicide bombers, most of the time, and I'm not being Islamophobic or anything like that, because there's a degree of respect you have to have for a man who will blow himself up. I don't care what religion he is. That level of dedication to something must be respected to a degree. But the point is, most suicide bombers are doing it for Allah, right? So for Andrew Tate, who already has at least, let's just say conservatively, 100,000 devout fans, right? Which is a lot of human beings, 100K devoted fans. A man of that level of influence, who already, with no spiritual component, can get 100,000 people to do something. Once he converts to one of the biggest religions in the world, if he was to become a leader in that field, Lord knows the tides he could turn, right? So I just want to make that clear. And the point is not to be daunting, and I'm not just pointing a finger at it just to say nothing. The end of this that I want to explain is, think of how important the spirit is, because a lot of people who've been taken out, especially as of late, look at where they're devoted, look at where they're focused. The moment that you become spiritually focused, you got to go. You can talk about money all day. Money comes, money goes, because that's something that can be manipulated by the power structure. Your money can be limited. It can be looked into. The IRS can take you down, right? But to connect to human beings on a spiritual level as their leader, right? That is something that really you should take a look at. You should really put some depth into thinking about, why is it once a man becomes a leader and he becomes a spiritual leader, why is it then when he's taken out, right? For me, I find no comfort in that thought process, although I know that I do hold it to be true. And I've noticed a pattern that every man who's providing spiritual guidance at a high level, he must be stopped, or he must be, I don't want to say dampened, but he must be put into a position to where he's working with the system, not against the system. And we all know that Andrew Tate was doing all he could to work against the system. He said that the Matrix got him. And although I think he's being facetious, and although he's an incredibly flawed man, there is a little bit of truth to what he's saying. Because when he was just a webcam guy making millions, no one cared. When he was just telling you to get your money up, no one really cared as far as the power structure. But the moment he was able to connect, or was about to embark on connecting on a spiritual or religious level, he had to go. And that's the end of this video. That's my last and final point. So as you are on the internet and you hear, all the buzzwords and what people will say and what have you, just think about that. That the moment Andrew Tate went too far is when he converted to Islam and was embarking on getting his followers to follow suit and to also convert to Islam, which will be for the power structure, which would be a horrible thing for them, because of the devotion that comes behind a man who can guide you spiritually, right? It's something beyond money. And once you're able to motivate people beyond money, that's when you become a threat. And that's just something I want you to consider as you study whatever you're studying religiously, and whatever denomination you are a part of. It's just something for you to consider. Thank you for your time. It's been Kai Shop the Icon, and I will see you again.